It is my privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, Jim FitzGibbon. FitzGibbon, a native of Ireland, joined the Four Seasons in 1976 as front office manager in their hotel in Toronto. Over a 35-year career, he climbed the corporate ladder from the front office manager to president of worldwide hotel operations. In that role, he oversaw the operation of the company's 85 hotels in 35 countries around the world and the corporate marketing and sales. He is also a new member of the Benchmark Senior Living Board of Advisors. Mr. FitzGibbon stands alone as one of the world's leading experts in hospitality and customer service. Please join me in welcoming Jim FitzGibbon.
Good morning, everybody. Now that you know that I'm an Irishman, we're not going to sing a German song, but we're going to start off a little bit. Oh, Danny boy. No, that's enough of that. We won't ask anyone to come up and do it afterwards. As Wendy said, 35 years with Four Seasons. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And when I retired at the end of 11, I said to myself, now, what should I do for the next period of my life? What should I carry on? And obviously, the part that I enjoyed most was the connection with the employees and what we think an exceptional culture that we established in that 35 years, which allowed us to expand around the world. It gave me a motivation to talk to groups like this. It gave me a motivation, frankly, to get involved with groups like this. And I was thrilled when Tom Grape and the team at Benchmark, Tom and Stephanie and Ollie's team, invited me to join their board of advisors. It's been a wonderful experience. I said to myself, how can I help this group? And how can I contribute? And secondly, is it going to be fun? Very important at this point in my life. Life has to be fun. So both have fulfilled my dream. They've been wonderful in exposing me to the business, realizing that I was in the luxury hotel business and you're in the senior living business, but there's lots of parallels. One of the things I had to get used to, though, is that you have this special language that you use in the business. CCRCs, ILs, LPNs, S&Ps. And Rick gave us a new one yesterday that I hadn't on my list of 40, was EDLIs. So acronyms are really something. But the important thing that I learned, and I had been exposed to senior living through my in-laws and my mom and so on, being in senior living, but visiting the senior living facilities and really seeing the first-hand dedication. And yesterday when I saw that Margie Longstreet getting her award, it gives you goose pimples. I'm not even in the business like you're in the business, where you get people who really commit themselves to that level, where you really go out of your way to make your residents feel really special and are so careful about comforting their loved ones. But what I'd like to talk a little bit about today is culture, the competitive advantage. How you can make your culture, of which you have a very strong, caring culture in your business, in your industry, throughout your industry. How you can make the culture of all the stakeholders, and when I say stakeholders, I'm really talking about your employees, your associates, your colleagues, and most importantly, yourselves. Most importantly, yourselves. I learned very early on with Four Seasons that it wasn't just about customer service. It's about company culture. And there is the question we ask ourselves. How will we win over the hearts and minds of our residents? How will we comfort their adult children? The answer to me is create an environment, create an exceptional environment, create an environment in which your associates can excel, in which you can excel, where they can be their very best. And if you do that, I believe they will prosper. You will prosper. Furthermore, you will create a distinct competitive advantage. At the conclusion of this talk, I want you to accept 5 challenges from me. I've got 5 principles I'm going to cover. The first is belief. Belief. You have to believe in your company culture. It has to be deep-rooted. Next, hiring and training. You have to commit the time to hiring and training the best. The third, care, respect, and dignity, a human thing. We all expect care, respect, and dignity. Make your employees feel genuinely, and I mean genuinely, not a program, genuinely valued. Next is trust. Trust is risky. Trust in their abilities. Give them the freedom. Give them the freedom to do what's right. And the last one, but very, very important, expect the best. I should click my slides forward. That would be really helpful. If you would do that, I believe your colleagues will respond. But before we get into the challenges, let me share with you my experiences at Four Seasons. As Wendy said, I joined in 1976 at the Inn on the Park in Toronto. And you can see this building. It's a motel in Canada, in Toronto, in the outskirts of Toronto. So the company started as a motel company in 1976 with a few hotels in regional places like Ottawa, Edmonton, Alberta, the coldest place in the world. Anybody from Edmonton here, sorry. Places like Belleville, Ontario, really places that didn't mean a lot. Canada wasn't a big player on the world stage. Luxury hotels weren't a big player. They didn't really, there was a few luxury hotels, and you could think of them, the Carlisle in New York and a few others, but there really wasn't a lot of luxury hotel business in the country at all. But early on, we made some very key decisions. One, that we would focus on luxury. Focus on luxury. That we'd operate only small to medium-sized hotels. Hotels in the 200 range, which is, in your business, I think, in the 60 to 80 unit community. That we would focus on management. That we wouldn't own the businesses. Sorry for all the REIT representatives here, but we didn't own the businesses. You owned the businesses. We operated the businesses, which was something that started in the 80s and was very new to the business at that time. It's not uncommon today. We also insisted on very long-term contracts. So we'd go to the owner. Can you imagine? I'm in China. I was 6 years in Asia. And you go to a Chinese investor and say, and he'd say, well, we'd like you, Four Seasons, very famous brand. We'd like you to run our business. How many years is your contract? And you'd look at him stone-faced and you'd say, 80 years. And the person would almost fall off the chair because they were thinking of 5 and 10 years and so on. Now, sure, you had performance along the way, but the real point was we wanted a very, very long-term contract. And I remember the first contract we signed in China with the Shanghai government was for 50 years. Was for 50 years. And that was the longest they'd ever done in the history of any contracts they'd ever done. So long-term contracts. Why long-term contracts? It was really about mutual commitment. It was mutual commitment to the business partner. It was mutual commitment to the guest. But most importantly, it was mutual commitment to the employees. And finally, we aimed to create hotels that really worked for guests, Comfortable places where people felt welcomed, cared for, but most important, functionality. Similar to the environments that you create today. In the early days, we spent a lot of time on basics like mattresses and towels and hair dryers and all these things that make it work. But we tried to figure out where to put things so it made it easy. Recently, I had a chance to see Benchmark's new facility in Bedford Falls. What a wonderful place. And I have to give a plug for Tom and his team here because what that intrigued me when I went into that facility is they really thought about, you can see the high stools. The high stools, they weren't designed for the residents. They were designed for the adult children. They were designed to say, this is also your place. You come into this place. Your folks are here, but you come in and feel comfortable. I thought that was extremely thoughtful on their part and really creates that very welcoming effect. I'm sure all of you have got projects like this, but this is really quite special. And Tom, I hear it's doing very well for you as well, so congratulations to you. Attention to detail is a lot of work. I always remember our chairman and founder. When we developed a new hotel, we did a model room. And the model room was done off-site, but it was done to scale and done by world-class designers. And the designer would have all sorts of beautiful things, and he would come in, and his biggest thing was, when I go to the bathroom at night, am I going to whack my knee off a piece of furniture? And more importantly, when I read a book and I'm finished at night, can I find the light switch? And he would lie down in the bed, take a book, and then finish the book and look for the light switch. Was it a beautiful light switch, or was it handy and did it work? I can remember so many times where he told the designers, this looks great, but forget it, it doesn't work, so change it. Okay? It was the functionality element of the luxury hotel business was remarkable, and his focus on functionality was something that you didn't see unless you were around him every day. This is a small example. The design of hotels was always important. The structure of the management agreements was key, but our biggest concern was service. Service was going to be the point of differentiation. This is what we wanted to be known for, and to get there, we had to motivate our employees. This would be how we create our unique advantage. So an important task became building a unifying culture. Sounds simple enough, but what does it mean? What does a culture mean? It doesn't mean everyone's got the same culture. It's finding people with a common set of values, a common set of values, and aligning those people around the common principle. Everyone can have a different principle, but aligning them around the key principle. Something simple, stay simple, has to be understood by everybody, something to guide them. The culture comes to life with consistent, predictable behavior. Behavior that reinforces these values and beliefs. Over time, it became our greatest competitive advantage. It's the key to success, and it transformed a small Canadian hotel company over the period of that time into a worldwide brand. The employees are the most important asset. Many years ago, we identified 3 factors that every important decision was filtered through. And the 3 Ps, as we used to call it: people, product, profit. People, the word people, the action people, always comes first. First. Not profit, product, people. People, product, profit. Just like you, it's a high-touch industry. But you have to put the decisions through this filter. How will this move? How will this decision? How will this direction affect our people? If we take care of our people and continue to improve our product, profit will follow. It all feeds into culture, the competitive advantage. Now, some people may say, well, that's the luxury hotel business. That's not in my business. That's not in the senior living business. In my opinion, it applies to every business. People think of competitive advantage, though, in terms of product and price, things of tangible value. Our experience at Four Seasons says otherwise. Four Seasons charges among the highest rates in the industry, We charge a premium over everybody else. Certainly, the hotels are excellent. They're well designed, in good locations. But to think of it, anybody can build a beautiful building. It just takes money. More challenging, creating an enduring company culture. That's more challenging. Four Seasons culture is based on a very simple principle. Again, simple. People, product, profit. Simple. The golden rule. Very simple. But do unto others as you would have do unto you. It becomes a way of your life. It's a bit religious, a little bit philosophical, but it couldn't be simpler. Do unto others as you would do unto you. So as you make a decision, think about it. Would I be comfortable with that decision if it was applied to me? It became our credo. It became the way we dealt with our guests, our customers, our business partners, our suppliers, and most importantly, how we dealt with each other. And in order for the company culture to take root, it had to start at the very top. In the end, it's all about leadership. Leadership has to really believe in it. We were fortunate. We had a founder and chairman who really had the vision and believed it from an early stage. And that's the first principle, belief. As a leader in the organization, and you are all leaders here today, you have to believe in the culture. You have to define it in writing. You have to put down your goals, beliefs, and operating principles so they're clear and understandable to you and to everybody else. As a leader, you have to own it. You can't play it. It's not a program. You have to own it. It has to be you. You have to demonstrate a passion for it. You have to feel it. You live and breathe it. All eyes are on you. You are the billboard for your culture as you've defined it. I realized that in established businesses, instilling a new culture can be difficult. And I remember when we took over a company in '92, it took us a long time. But recently, I was just reading an article in the New York Times. And just to illustrate the difficulty in establishing a new culture, this is a company that you probably don't know called LivePerson, but the example is good. It's an online business that helps customers it helps with customer engagement, and was very successful as a new .com company, and it's been around for about 10 years. They grew very, very quickly, and they had about 350 employees. All of a sudden, they became very bureaucratic and into process, and had lost the entrepreneurial spirit that made them successful. So the founder and the chairman said, hang on a second, we have to rethink where we are. He got the group together and said, what is our goals? And the group came up with 40 different goals. And he said, no, hang on a second. We can't have 40 goals here. We can only have a couple. So out of that meeting, out of the period of review, they came up with 2 goals. Behave like an owner and help others. Okay? Behave like an owner. Be entrepreneurial, take a risk, and help others. Simple, clear. What happened after that? Interesting. Of the 350 employees, half the employees left the company. Some of them were asked to leave because they didn't buy into the new program. Some just didn't like it and left. So it was a tough, difficult decision to change the culture. But the founder believes in it, and the results paid off. In the end, he had a dedicated, focused workforce and a group guided by this new culture, and they went on to success. At Four Seasons, we went through exactly the same process early on. And if you read our chairman's book, it's very interesting. He's now 84, and you'll ask him what was one of the most difficult decisions in his business life. And he started the company in '61. He said, early on, when I wrote the goals, beliefs, and operating principles, some people said, no, that's all wrong. We're being too liberal with our employees. That won't work. This, as you've defined it, won't work. Well, frankly, and these are some people who started the business with him, he said, if you don't think it's not going to work, you have to leave the company. And frankly, about half the senior executives left the company at that time. If you ask him today, he said it was the most difficult decision that he ever made. These are his friends. These are people that he started the business with. But he said, my direction, my vision was this way, and they were not part of the vision, and they couldn't buy in. So I had to make this very difficult decision. But it was the ultimate belief in the culture. In the end, it's the right people make the right culture. There's no guidebook that I can tell you that behaving like Four Seasons will get you this type of culture. You have to interpret it for yourselves. But you have to believe in the culture you're going to build. And as a leader in your organization, you have to hire people who also believe. And that brings me to my second principle. And yesterday, it was very interesting. I spent time with the marketing group. Jim Pusateri is in the group. And he invited me to speak to them. And I know we spent a lot of time talking about hiring and training. And I know in the industry that you have high turnover, which is very, very difficult to have a unified group when you got high turnover. But my suggestion to you is you have to spend the time in selecting all your people. I know it's a huge investment. At Four Seasons, each employee went through 5 or 6 interviews. And they weren't just functional interviews, they were real interviews for every job. And that meant, I remember in my Dallas days, we had maybe 600 employees. So it was a big business, from greenskeepers to housekeepers to every level of person you can imagine. I spent a lot of my time as a general manager there. But the 6th interview was with me, normally, if I was there. And why was the 6th interview with me? It was to say to that employee, you are part of the family, and making sure that everybody had gone through the filters and that the values that we thought were important were there. So it was rare that I rejected anybody, quite frankly. But the upside of that is when the employee was, before they got on the floor, before they were actually doing any service, they had met the person who was running the business. More importantly, when you went into the cafeteria the next day or whatever, You mightn't always remember their name, but you would say, hi, how are you? How is things going? All of a sudden, they feel part of the family and part of the culture. That's where the next point is make genuine connections with people. And you can see it's bolded on genuine. It's not functional connections. It's making genuine. And I use the most simple and natural gestures. Simple and natural. My wife drives me crazy because I drive her crazy, I think is more important. In the morning, we're out walking, and we're very active people. We're out walking, and everybody I meet in the neighborhood say, good morning. She said, what are you saying good morning to people for? They don't want to say good morning. I said, sorry, but it's inbuilt in me that you have to say good morning. And I look in their eyes. Some people look over to the street. But it was all part of the way you establish the culture in the business. Simple gestures. Doesn't have to be complicated. Good morning, make eye contact, and really mean it. They feel more vested in what they do, and importantly, they connect with others. Because don't forget, it's not connecting with you that's going to make the difference. It's how the energy is translated with their peers and how they work with their peers. That's what's going to make the difference. Personal connections become possible because we share values. The golden rule, do unto others as we would do unto you. It's a universal value. It's practiced in every country, in every culture. So in Four Seasons, we were able to translate this as we moved around the world. We opened in Mumbai about 7-8 years ago. And I don't know how many of you have been to India. Fascinating country, but a crazy country at the same time. And, you know, you see that picture. That's a picture of the hotel. And that's the picture of the neighborhood. Now, you could say that's a slum. Yeah, that's a slum. Any of you seen Slumdog Millionaire? That is pretty real. I hate to tell you, it's very sad, but it is pretty real. We had 400 positions for that hotel that were hired, and everybody applied on the internet, and they had 20,000 applicants, all college graduates. Gives you an idea of the workforce, all college graduates. But the interesting thing that they did, which I thought was remarkable, is that they said, hang on a second, we're going to hire a number of people from this local slum. And people say, oh, no, they don't understand the hotel business, they're not educated, and so on. Hang on a second. It's really about values. So they put out in the community they're going to hire 40 or 50 people from this slum. I feel bad saying slum, but it is a slum. It's a very humble environment. So the 40, 50 people. This young man, I remember meeting him. He arrives for an interview. He arrives at the hotel, never been in the hotel, scared out of his life. His mom sells nuts at the corner of the street to look after their family. They live in a shack, okay? And he arrived, he looked like he'd been scrubbed. You know, I remember when I used to go to church with my family as a kid, you were scrubbed on Saturday night. You know, you all had a bath and you were scrubbed. And he looked like he'd been scrubbed. His face was shining, his hair was combed, and, you know, his shirt was clean. It was simple. But here's a young man that actually did get hired because, frankly, he was a beautiful person and had great values, and his mom had done a wonderful job with this individual. And he has gone on to no university education, but has gone on to be a manager within that business because he had the right values. Once you have a cultural match, you have to commit to training. Now, everyone assumes in the luxury hotel business we have very intense training programs. We really don't. We really don't. We hire the right people, and training is a small step along the way. Now, in your business, I understand clearly. You're dealing with life and death, and you're dealing with medical situations, and you have to get it right. So the training element on that side has to be extremely exact, and it's not open for error. But it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier if you hire the right people. Training is easier when you hire the right people. Take the time to hire, and training is a subsection of that. It really isn't all about training. It really starts with the right people. Because I know all of you have great training programs, and you spend a lot of time on it. But I also heard yesterday that, you know, because you've got high turnover, you're trying to fill positions. So it's the hiring that makes the difference. The training is easier when you hire the right people. People watching people what they do, which is really what we do in our business. When we open new hotels, we bring in experienced people. And I know Tom and Stephanie and your team, when you opened Bedford Falls recently, you brought a great team from around your communities, and they sort of lifted the business right away. It gave it a jump start. And I'm sure you all do that as well, that when you're opening new businesses, that you bring in the best team to help jump start the business. And I think when you're in New Hampshire, in Chicago, or in North America, that's relatively easy. But one of the challenges we had, and I've used this example before because I like it a lot, is when we opened Bora Bora. Now, Bora Bora is a magical, magical, magical island in the middle of the South Pacific. But Tahiti is the island, and Bora Bora is a little island, about half the size of downtown Charlotte, with a village there, but nothing much else. But it's a beautiful environment. It is a stunning environment. People pay a fortune to go there. But the reputation of that country is that people go there on their honeymoon. They pay $1,400, $1,500 a night to stay. They never go back. Not because they didn't have a good honeymoon, I hope they did, but because the service is generally not that great, and people can be a bit arrogant and so on, okay? So we said, okay, how do we get culture carriers to go to Bora Bora? You have to be French citizen, not a European citizen, French citizen, or a Tahitian citizen, or forget it, you can't go. So we got 30 people from around the company to go there and instill the culture and the values in that group. And to this day, it's magical when you go there today. And I don't know if you've been, but they're great dancers, and you've seen movies of all that. And the energy in that property today is really quite exciting. And it's really because we were able to do what Benchmark and other people do at their properties here, lift it up, develop the culture from the beginning, and set them on the right track and behave predictably. Are you familiar with the company called Zappos, the online retailer? Very fascinating company. Take time to read about it, particularly when you're looking at culture. It's the chairman, CEO, founder is a guy called Tony Hsieh. And you can see by the slide up there, they define their culture as happiness. Now that sounds a bit crazy. You know, happiness, how can your culture be happy? This is a place where employees are encouraged to have fun, be social, generally be happy. And in order to find a cultural fit, they invite them to different events. But one of the quotes that I thought was particularly good in that book from Tony was that he says, no matter how talented the applicant is, if they don't fit the culture, not the skills, if they don't fit the culture, we don't hire them, no matter how desperate we are. That's a good lesson for all of us to think about. In the senior living business, you need to know who you're hiring. It's hypercritical to your success. You work in a highly demanding business and an emotional business, very personal business. I can't emphasize enough, commit the time to the hiring process. It is the unique individual that you need. One who genuinely provides care, respect, and dignity to your residents. It's what they deserve and require. But I want you to look at this care, respect, and dignity in another way, in terms of your relationship with your associates. That's my third principle, care, respect, and dignity. The emotional demands on your employees are greater, I think, than most other professions. They make very personal connections with your residents. They develop relationships, and these relationships cease. I know it's a heavy, heavy, heavy burden. It's hard to compare what hotel employees do compared to what your people do day to day, and I wouldn't dare to do so. The challenges are very different, but we always treated the employees with the same care and respect as we gave the guest. So there was not two standards, there was one standard. And in my experience, they always responded. An example again, and I go overseas because of my time overseas, I go to China, cast your mind to China in 1997. What's that, 16 years ago? We opened, 98, we opened in China, in Shanghai. Shanghai today is unbelievable. At that point, yeah, it was progressing, but still it was early days. Tiananmen Square was, I think, late 80s. Now we're 10 years later, not very long. And when we opened the property, it was already built, actually, and we had to acquire the building, and the business hadn't been opened. But one of the first focuses was on the back of the house. was to make sure that the back of the house would allow our employees to function. Remember, we used to hear stories about Disney 25, 30 years ago and how they used to focus on the back of the house so that when their associates were getting ready to perform, they were all organized to perform when they came up stage. But at that point, most of our employees lived within a fairly close radius of the hotel. So they didn't have hot water in their homes, or if they did, it was very limited. So we put in showers that were ample, cafeterias that were fairly generous, and uniforms that fit and were comfortable. So you can imagine, here are your employees who are not used to showers, are not used to ample hot water. They arrive in the shower area, and they stay for an hour. Okay? They stay for an hour. And there's a party going on inside in the showers. Right? And the engineers come and say, holy moly, it's not the guests who are using the water, the employees in the showers are using it. And secondly, they didn't know how to keep the place tidy, so it became a bit of a pigsty fairly quickly. Cafeteria, they go to the cafeteria, they weren't used to getting free food. And we, as a company, one of the benefits we provide to our employees worldwide is free food. They get a free meal every day while they're on duty. Well, you can imagine Chinese employees would arrive with a plate and they'd stack it like this. It would be stacked high. They thought that this was something we were doing at the beginning just to win them over. We weren't going to continue. There's not going to be a free meal every day. So we're going to eat now like hell, and we'll see how we'll be in the future. Then the uniforms. You know, they were back 15 years ago. It wasn't very fashionable. But we would get them properly designed uniforms, or if it was housekeepers, uniforms that fit, or if it was people who worked in the kitchen, uniforms that fit what they were doing. And that we took the time to fit them properly. And it's amazing, amazing what happened over the next, it took about 2 years for them to believe that we were real. And once they believed that we were real, then they picked it up, and they became the culture carriers. And now today, they've got maybe a dozen or so more hotels in China. And they're the culture carriers in China as they go forward. But I would ask you to think about your facilities as well, and how you provide for your employees, for their basic needs, so that when they're at work, they feel at home. I always remember working in Philadelphia back in the early 80s. And Philly was a transitional city at the time. And I remember employees talking to me and said, you know, the highlight of my day is coming to work. That's a big thing for people to say. The highlight of my day is coming to work. The way you look after us and the way you treat us and the facilities that you provide to us, this is the highlight of my day. That was a huge motivation. 2008 was a very difficult year for the luxury hotel business. Now, we all remember 2008. We're sort of still in this mini recession, or the major recession into a mini recession. AIG, the big insurance company, was bailed out by the government. At the same time, they had a conference going on in Southern California for their agents, spent $500,000. And I think the chairman must have flown in by private jet. And as we probably know, there was an election going on at the time. So it became very much the focus of you-know-who at the election. And what waste and how terrible that the government is supporting this company, and they're spending on luxury and private planes and so on. So the hotel business, the luxury hotel business, plummeted. Absolutely fell off the end of the table. We operate business on behalf of other people. We don't own the businesses, so obviously we have to respond. In the end, we have to lay people off. But it's very interesting how the culture came to life in that situation. And I forget who at the time said it, but really what we have to do is de-hire. We're not laying people off. Okay, how do people put their resumes together? How do people learn how to do interviews? How can we invite people in to see, can they hire some of these people? So you took a much more proactive approach, rather than say, here's your pink slip, sorry about it, won't see you on Monday. Hang on a second, over the next week, granted it was on their time, but they came in and they were trained in how to look for a job, apply for a job, interview for a job. To me, that made a big impact on me, and most importantly, it made a big impact on the employees who didn't leave. They felt very secure in their role because they felt the care and respect and dignity that they were getting, that their colleagues who were leaving were getting, said, I'm going to get that same care, respect, and dignity. I feel good about where I'm working. Yesterday, the day before, the Fortune 100 list came out of the best companies in North America to work for. And I know, Tom, I'm sure others here have on the same list, but you've rightly so very proudly of how you're recognized in Boston. And I'm sure others in their communities are recognized likewise as being one of the best employers. But this was the national one, which is pretty significant. Google, by the way, is #1. And it caught my attention because Google gives away so many massages last year. So they have a massage area for the employees. And they have a bocce ball area, and they have a whole bunch of other things, and they're #1. Okay, they're a creative company, and that was part of the energy that they want to create. Scripps Health in San Diego are on the list to pay out healthy bonuses tied to patient satisfaction. Starbucks give their part-time employees full benefits and stock options. And again, Tom, I know one of the things that really impressed me about you and everyone at Benchmark is you have a one-company fund, which I'm sure, again, I don't know all the different programs you have, but you have things like that. The One Company Fund is designed to help employees who are in need. And it's a grant. It's not something they have to repay, which is pretty fantastic, because it really is about care and respect and dignity at the time of need. All this goes a long way to building trust. Trust. And that's my fourth principle, trust. Trust is the fourth in creating a company culture. It's the most precious thing in business. It's the most precious thing in every relationship. If you want your relationships, no matter what they are, particularly at home, you better have lots of trust. So trust is very difficult to build. As long as you have a solid culture at the foundation, trust will come. When you trust, I like this quote, when you trust, starts with you the leaders, trust your employees, they trust you. It doesn't start the other way around. You have to earn their trust, and they will trust you. So it starts with you. Trust from the residents and the loved ones then follows, because it transfers. Because I consider when you've trust, you've confidence. You know, when you feel secure in your role, you've confidence. And I often use the expression that when people feel they're trusted, watch how their head stands. They stand tall, and watch how they walk. They walk with their shoulders back, and they feel, I'm confident, I'm okay, because people trust me. And that's huge. One of the programs we put in that it worked very well for us. We had a slogan that said, get it right. Get it right. Be accurate, be on time, be exact. Important for your business. 7 o'clock wake-up call, it better come at 7 o'clock in the morning. It can't be 7:05. It has to be 7 o'clock. So you have to be exact. Get me right, which is something that I think your caregivers do wonderfully every day with your residents, is get me right. Do something for me. It's not a program. It's not a standard. It's not something you can institute. It's a way of life. It's a way of saying, you do what's right for that person at that time. Okay? Because there's so much pressure to standardize things. But really, standardized things are a way of putting your finger in the dike because something bad happened. Okay? I mean, okay, I understand that when you're dealing with medicine and so on, you do need certain standards and you need certain disciplines. I get that. But now we're on to the get me right part. That is about the individual feeling comfortable, feeling respected, feeling trusted, and now dealing with your resident in this type of way, where it's a very personal relationship. And then the other third one is wow me if you can. Makes sense. Do something that's unusual, that is really something out of the box. For us, that became very, very powerful rallying cry, as you can imagine, across the world. It improved employee morale. They felt they were in charge themselves and get satisfaction with it. A program I like to talk about, again, I go to exotic parts of the world, and you think, why do I pick exotic parts of the world? Because you have this, you look at the beautiful picture, and that's beautiful, and this is the Seychelles, which is in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and you all want to go on vacation there right now. But that's not the point. I want you to listen. The listen was that the employees come from, again, the local villages like Bora, and they have no exposure to worldwide clientele. Again, rates in these places are extraordinarily high. It's, I think, 10-hour flight from Europe or something like that. It's from North America, forget it. It's days on end, okay? It takes forever to get there, but it's a gorgeous place. But that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is that there's a lady who's trying to order room service. That island is a bilingual island, but she couldn't communicate with the room service order taker. There's a housekeeper vacuuming the room. This is a local lady. I met the lady, local lady, and she heard what was going on. And she turned off her vacuum, went over and said in a very confident way, "Let me help you order for you." She was bilingual. "Let me help you order for you." Okay, that person could have kept going with their work, could have ignored what was going on, and nobody would have said, no one was expecting that person to help, but stopped, went over and said, "How can I help you?" and placed the order. Well, this lady happened to be the wife of a very senior executive, I think, with Airbus or something like that, I don't know. But all they could do was, of course, write about this individual. And I know you have things like that happen in your business all the time. It's the quality of the employee engagement is really what it's all about. Remember, frontline employees are usually the least paid. They are. They're usually the least paid. Some might say they have the potential to be the least motivated. They have the potential to be the least motivated. Yet if you let their values, guide their decisions, they will feel a sense of power and confidence. Hire the right people, and they instinctively do right by the guest. The employees are wired to help people. And you say, "I'm painting a really rosy picture." Well, trust me, things go wrong. And one of the highlight meetings, and I know a number of you have meetings every morning, you call them stand-ups or daily task meetings or whatever, but one of the meetings that we had, we used a different name called glitch meeting, and that sounds like negative, things that went wrong, things that didn't happen. I think yesterday Benjamin talked about celebrating mistakes. And we used to celebrate the mistakes. But we didn't want to know about the mistakes. We want to know what you did about the mistake. Now, that sounds okay if you're here in Charlotte or you're in Chicago or somewhere. If you're in Japan and you say to a manager, "I want you to come up and tell us what mistakes your employee made yesterday," it's like he's going to jump on his sword. And it's just culturally, it's a huge thing for them to do. But if you can create that environment where they're comfortable to say they're going to celebrate those mistakes, not the mistake, it's the recovery. It's the fact that the bottle of wine got spilt in the room. It's not the fact that you spilled it on the dress, for example. What did you do about it? Oh, I brought them back a new bottle of wine. I cleaned the room, or I changed the room if necessary. I comped them last night. I called the dry cleaner because I knew they were going to a meeting in the morning, and I had the dry cleaner come in and we cleaned the dress. And the guest couldn't be happier. We returned the dress this morning. Everything's fine. Could somebody say good morning to Mrs. Smith when she gets on the go? Because I think she's all fine. Wow, what a great story. Okay, mistake, recovery, all done because of an individual taking it on themselves. It isn't about, I have to call my superior to ask what I'm going to do. That doesn't work. If it's all about, I have to check, double check, that doesn't work. What are they going to do? Give away a bottle of wine, give away dry cleaning, give away nothing. They're giving away nothing. But what they are doing is they're using their own energy and their own confidence to look after the guest. And that's what makes the difference. Bigger story, Southwest Airlines. Lived in Texas for 10 years and obviously flew Southwest a lot. I used to go up and down to Austin. And I always was impressed with them at the time, small regional airline back in the 80s. But it's interesting to go into their website, and Herb Keller was always a guy, the founder of Southwest, that impressed me. And in their website, they have a quote: "Our competitors could copy everything in our strategy tomorrow. But the punchline is, they can't copy our culture, and they know it." And it's an interesting one to look at because it's very strong words, it's a very powerful thought. But you know, Southwest Airlines today is 82% unionized. 82% unionized. Never been on strike. Never had a strike. Never had a strike in their history. I was surprised with that. What's the next one that surprised me? It's always been profitable. For 40 years, that airline has always made money. Always made money. From the time they were small to the time they were large. How many national airlines can say that? I'm not so sure. There's not very many left. So, you know, it's a testament, honestly, and I had the fortune of meeting Herb Keller and talking about his culture, and saw how when he got on a plane, it was electric. He said hello to the crew, said hello to the flight attendants, said hello to the guests. And one of the highlights, of course, is we flew at that point between Austin and Dallas on a Friday evening. When you bought a ticket, which was very high tech at the time from a machine, they gave you free beer. So on a Friday afternoon, there was lots of free beer flying around. And Herb Keller would hand it all out. He would go up and down the plane handing out free beer. But just the energy that he created was fantastic. And obviously, it's a much bigger business than most of your businesses today, but impressive nonetheless. Last point, and frankly, I think the one that you're probably surprised that I might have there. Expect peak performance. Expect peak performance. Have high expectations. I remember when I was in front of employee groups, I'd say, this is all that we're going to do for you, and this is what you're going to do for us, okay? And the two must match. The two hands have to be level. If we're doing too much and you're not doing enough, something's wrong. If the other way around, you're going to feel left out. So the hands need to be level. Netflix, very successful company. They have an interesting way of looking at high performance. In many companies, adequate performance gets a moderate raise. In Netflix, adequate performance gets a generous severance package. Wow. I mean, I sort of read that. I don't know if I put that in my culture statement, but it's there. I thought it was very harsh, but they say the cost of having adequate is too high. Because they define their culture. They define their culture, not our culture, their culture, by excellence and high performance. It's a place where employees get energy from one another, and they thrive along like-minded colleagues. That's the way that they define their culture. There's not one culture. But the key to all this, the only way to ensure peak performance is to measure it. And that was a very important part of how we lived our life at Four Seasons. And I was talking to Tom earlier, we measured peak performance relative to our guests in one side. And that was done by the marketing team, and they did it very well. But really where we spent the measurement time was peak performance relative to our associates and employees. That's where we spent the time. We did a survey with the employees every year. They had 57 questions that they had answered. 57 questions. It was done at all levels. Line employees, managers, all the way up to the most senior people. They would even get a crack at saying, hey, how's Fitz doing? Okay? So they would criticize or comment on everything and anything. And we set it up in a way that it was really a special day where people went and filled in the survey. 85% filled it in. And we did it online. We did it in writing. We did it in different languages. And we had translators if people had trouble with it, and to the point where we had people writing it for people who had trouble writing. Because we had greenskeepers and other people who didn't have those skills. And Spanish was their first language and so on. But more importantly in that, the lesson in that was the day we did the survey, we also announced the day we'd give the results to the employees. Unfiltered, results would come out 6 weeks later. We would announce, we're doing the 15th of April, 6th of June, we're going to have an all-employee meeting, and Fitz is going to go up there and tell you what you said. Good, bad, and ugly. Okay? Very important. Why did we do that? Because, frankly, you need to know what they're thinking. Peak performance it was about the employees performing well, yes, but it was about managers being peak in their performance relative to managing their associates. That's where the rubber hit the road. And frankly, and I can think of people whose careers have gone up and down. They've mostly gone down, not because the hotel wasn't profitable, not because they didn't have market share, but because they couldn't engage with their employees. And they didn't have a committed group. And their surveys were not good. I can tell you an eureka moment for me is when I was criticized fairly heavily in a survey. And I can still remember reading it, and I go, holy moly. And I focused on it, and to this day, I became passionate about your responsibility and how you were really not the boss. You were the orchestra like Benjamin Zander. You were organizing everybody, and it was for you to engage them. It wasn't their mistake. It wasn't like the guys who didn't appear at the concert. And as Benjamin said yesterday, he apologized to them. And you have to apologize if they're not performing well. That's a turn for the book. You apologize because you're not performing well. And we would go to the point of showing them, most people would say, I don't get paid enough. Nobody gets paid enough. I don't get paid anymore. And then you'd have to go to the point of saying, okay, this is why you get paid, and this is what you get paid. One of the things that happened out of this, and one of those attitudes happened, is we were mainly non-union. We were coming out of Canada, heavily unionized environment, moving into the United States. I remember going to Philly and said, we're not going to be union in the 80s. As you can imagine, in the 80s in Philly, not being union was quite a deal. And most of our properties in North America, bar a few, are not unionized. So that's how some of these tactics and evolutions happened. One of the other things that happened is that we had what we call a direct line committee. Every month, representatives from each department met the general manager, and it was a direct line. No minutes were taken. Nobody else attended the meeting, no secretaries, nobody, except the people who were representing the employees. And they shared with the general manager what was going on and what was their concerns. So not only were you waiting for the survey once a year, you were evolving in your thinking all the time. And that's how you were measured. That's how you were paid, by the way. A big portion of the general manager's discretionary or matrix, I suppose is the best way to put it, was based on the survey. Now, it wasn't an exact number, but it was an indicator of how you were doing. But there was a big part of their bonuses were made on that. The only way to ensure peak performance is to measure it. Well, shared a few thoughts. Let me just summarize again. Let me summarize again the 5 points. Belief. Consistent, committed, predictable leadership. I left out the word predictable. That's very important. And you could say predictable behavior. So people could predict how you're going to deal with a certain situation. Hiring and training. Hire the best. Take the time. Take the time. It's a unique person you want. It's not a warm body that you want. It's a unique person. And frankly, the more people you bring in a hurry, the more people you're going to bring in a hurry. It's just a self-perpetuating role. Because they're brought in, they're not trained, and frankly, they were the wrong people to start with, and they'll infect your people, and you'll never stabilize your business. And I know there's sort of a panic when you're short of people, but that panic has to be managed. Care, respect, and dignity. Think about the employees as a key stakeholder. Your residents, your loved ones, their loved ones, and your employees are key stakeholders. Think of them that way. Trust, believe in their judgment. And you know, if they make mistakes, they make mistakes. Now, realize it has to be within the boundaries of safety, but mistakes are okay. There's nothing wrong with mistakes. It's not life-threatening if they make a mistake, but believe in their judgment. Expect peak performance, expect the best. Listen to your colleagues. Listen, intently listen, and set a high standard. If you've got people who don't fit the culture and don't work out, don't keep them around. They are infecting the best. So listen to your colleagues and set a high standard. And I say colleagues because I mean colleagues across everybody. I just don't mean the line employees. I mean everybody within your business. Listen and set a high standard. You're going to have to write your own script. It's not the script from Four Seasons or anybody else. But you can unify your employees. You can instill a great culture. And you can create a competitive advantage. And last but by no means least, I'll give you the last bar of Danny Boy. No, I won't. Thank you very much.